Joining us now on the Movies and Stuff show, film director and legendary visual effects master, Douglas Trumbull. Douglas, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, man. 2001, I'm just going to say it right off the top, is one of my favorite films, probably my favorite film of all time. And when I was reading the excerpts of Arthur C. Clarke's diary, it makes it sound like ideas were all over the place, even up until Christmas 1965. So I want to know, from your perspective, was it that crazy and that up in the air?
Well, it wasn't crazy and it wasn't up in the air. It was that Kubrick was embarking on an adventure that wanted to explore a new kind of filmmaking. And it was research and development. I mean, it was to make a science fiction space movie in this epic Cinerama, giant screen, 90-foot wide process. And nobody knew how to do that or what it should entail or what it should look like. And so Kubrick was amazingly open to experimentation, exploration, various takes on different things, trying things different ways. So I wouldn't say it was crazy at all. I think it was a very, very focused effort to get it right.
Yeah, I like that description, research and development, because you know that makes a lot of sense, because it really was just, no one had seen something like that before. It's just truly amazing. And now, kind of looking back now, with the technology that's available today, would there be anything that you would do differently from what you did then with today's technology?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I've been working on this, changing the technology ever since 2001, because I was profoundly affected by working on the movie, working in Cinerama, working on a giant screen, working in 70 millimeter, and having Stanley Kubrick as my mentor. And it blew my mind. And I was very excited about, becoming a filmmaker myself, which I did. And the great disappointment that came after 2001 was that the movie industry multiplexed itself into small screens. And the giant epic screen of 2001 and Lawrence of Arabia and Sound of Music and all those, big epic show movies went away. And I've been struggling to get that back ever since. So to answer your question, I finally figured it out. And it's all digital. And I realized that even though we have pretty much an all digital world now, we have digital cameras, digital post-production, digital projection, digital sound, we're still carrying baggage of the old movie processes of certain aspect ratios and brightnesses and frame rates and things. And I think it's time to just re-examine it. I think it's time for movies to reboot themselves. So yeah, I can tell you what that is if you ever want to know.
During the production of 2001, as it's all coming together, is the film making sense to you, or is it still pretty abstract from your perspective?
Oh no, it makes perfect sense to me. I was on a buzz the entire time. I was absolutely thrilled to be working on this movie. It was really fascinating to be there during the development of the movie, because Kubrick was actually changing the screenplay and changing the dialogue and changing the structure almost on a daily basis.
Wow.
And that was part of the research and development, because, we're making a movie in Cinerama. I mean, this is 70 millimeter giant screen, and it's completely offers a completely different palette to the filmmaker of kind of an immersive experience. And Kubrick was sensing that more and more as the movie progressed. So he started actually changing his own cinematic language throughout the production of the movie. And it became more and more a first-person experience rather than a third-person experience. And he started eliminating over-the-shoulder shots, eliminating reverses, and he wanted the audience to feel like they were on this trip themselves, not voyeuristically through empathy with a character, but actually more directly. And that's the thing that he got onto that kept changing everything every day, and that resulted in the movie that you see, and that has profoundly affected my career.
Yeah, and you know it's funny too is one of the great anecdotes I've heard you mention before was the model of the moon surface that you worked on, right. And it's such a great story. But after that, you know, being that you were so young, did that affect you anyway? Were you still able to approach, you know, Stanley with different changes you wanted to do, or did you feel kind of like, all right, well, you know, I just wasted all this time doing this moon thing he's not using, so why bother?
No. Stanley and I had a really unusual and terrifically close relationship, and he trusted me implicitly. But we also disagreed from time to time. And he was the guy. He was in charge. He's the director. He's raised the money. He's responsible. And so it's not that we had to agree every minute, but it was kind of a fun issue that arose about the lunar surface because Stanley had really become entranced by Chesley Bonestell's space paintings, which were very influential in the world of science fiction, and that's the kind of look he wanted. And I was, you know, thinking scientifically about what I thought the moon might be like, and looking at some of the early photographs of the moon and astrophotographs of the moon. I said, well, I don't think it's going to look like that. I think it's going to look soft and rounded and different and pockmarked. And it turned out I was right. Stanley was wrong, but he got what he wanted. And there's nothing wrong with it, you know. It's just that it's not what the moon really looks like. It's one of the design aspects of the movie that kind of missed the mark a little bit.
Mm-hmm. You know, when it first is released, 2001 wasn't going strong at the box office. Right. But once the kids started seeing it, it really was the ultimate trip. The film really started picking up the pace. Now, were you aware of that groundswell of popularity among the kids?
Well, I mean, I was a very young guy at the time, so I wasn't really, you know, tracking movie box office results or anything like that. I had no clue about that. But it was apparent from the reviews, which were mockingly terrible, that this movie was eluding people, that there was something that just they didn't grasp about what Stanley was trying to do. And there were a couple of things that went on. One was Stanley immediately rushed in and cut 17 minutes out of the movie because he felt that he got a little self-indulgent and some of the stuff just went on too long. But secondarily, there was a marketing guy at the studio, and I can't remember his name right now. You could probably track it down, who rebranded the movie The Ultimate Trip. And the story that I had been hearing was that even though the reviews were bad and the theaters were almost empty and the movie had been playing for about a month, there was talk at the studio and the exhibitors about pulling the movie and just, you know, putting it in a can someplace until young people started going to the front row, smoking pot and tripping out. And that was the rebirth of the movie as The Ultimate Trip. And so, you know, the next day there were 2 rows filled up. The next day there were 4 rows filled up. And pretty soon, by word of mouth, the movie found a younger audience that really enjoyed the alternative world of 2001.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, we discuss a lot of movies on the show that when they first originally get put out, it's either over people's heads or they just can't quite get it, and then over time, it's become even more appreciated, and just this is one of those movies that, you know, it might have started off slow at the box office, but nowadays you can't go without talking about 2001. It's one of the greatest films of all time. So
yeah, I think it's important to remember. You know, I just like to remind people, particularly people that are younger who never saw it in Cinerama originally, that that's what it was designed to be seen as. And when you diminish its scale by showing it on a smaller flat screen, or even going so far as to showing it on TV, it loses a tremendous amount of its impact because it's a media-based concept that is kind of a lost art. I can talk about it endlessly, but you know, 2001 really, if you're in a giant wraparound screen and you're kind of immersed in the movie and the sound and everything, it makes a completely different kind of sense to your brain.
Right. It's the type of thing that you should not be watching on your iPhone.
Definitely. Makes no sense. No, just forget about it.
I'm going to change gears just a little bit. I wanted to ask you about Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yep.
Richard Taylor was very candid about the butting heads that he had with Roddenberry. Roddenberry was always informing him and astronauts and MIT students how things would really work in space in the future. Did you end up butting heads with Roddenberry at all like that too?
No, I had nothing to do with that. I only met him once. Gene was considered by the studio to be a pain in the neck and constantly intruding on the creative process. And they had some contract with him where he had, he could exert a lot of creative control. He'd obviously been the mastermind behind the creation of the entire television series and the vision of it and all that. But when it came to making a feature film, it started becoming a different animal. So there was a completely previous crew that were people that I knew who were trying to do the special effects for 2001, or excuse me, Star Trek, and had failed miserably and were about to be fired. And there was a big turmoil at the studio about it. The turmoil was about whether the movie was actually going to be released on time. And there was panic at the studio because the studio was being threatened by a class action lawsuit by the exhibitors who had paid in advance to show Star Trek starting on December 7th of that year. And they were really annoyed by this process of blind bidding. I don't know if you know anything about what that is, but it was the process where theaters would pay in advance for the rights to show a movie. And so the studios would use that money to finance the production of the movie. Kind of a risk-free thing for them.
Yeah.
But the exhibitors were really annoyed by it. And when they found out that there was a chance that Star Trek wasn't going to open on time, they threatened to file this class action lawsuit and close 2,000 theaters over the Christmas holidays.
Oh, wow.
Just close them and file a suit to just kill this thing altogether. So that was the panic at the studio, which I had this really wild meeting with the studio heads and the lawyers and everything. And they said, we're going to get this movie done on time. Doesn't matter whether it's got black leader. It doesn't matter if the story makes sense. It doesn't matter anything. It's going to be open, and we're going to be over this lawsuit problem. So that was when I came in and said, okay, I'll fix it for you. It's going to be a killer job for me because I really don't want to do it, but it was a way for me to negotiate out of my contract with them, which I wasn't very happy with. It's a long story.
It's remarkable. I really, and it's so amazing, 2001, Star Trek, Blade Runner, Andromeda Strain, Close Encounters. I mean, you've really had your hand in, when you talk about sci-fi movies, you've had your hand in the big boys, So I guess my question for you, though, is outside the work that you've done, is there a particular movie that you just kind of sit back and really appreciated the visual effects for?
I still stand back behind 2001 more than anything. It was a groundbreaking movie for its day. It still holds up quite well today, and it broke some new ground back in opened in 1968. And the truth of the matter is that no filmmakers have ever really understood how it was made and how it came to be so revered as a classic movie. And that, to me, has to do with the nature of the story. It has to do with Stanley Kubrick's intellect and almost genius level ideas. It has to do with the visual artistry of the movie. And it has to do with very big cosmic ideas about, epic ideas of contact with extraterrestrials and interference in human affairs, and very big ideas, and doing it in a very almost abstract way. So it still holds up to me. I think, it was such a groundbreaking movie, and it's been a real big disappointment to me that the industry and other directors haven't really understood how it works and haven't done it yet.
You bring this up.
I'm going to give it a try, by the way, so don't count me out.
Okay.
Well, I think this leads into Abe's next question, though, for sure.
Yeah. You're always talking about immersion and immersive technologies and experiences, but I've also heard you bring up interactive too. So what's your vision? How would you do it?
Say that again.
I said, so what's your vision to merge all this together and it's kind of interactive immersion?
Well, I don't talk too much about interactive, actually. I'm interested in it. I'm curious about virtual reality, particularly as an alternate reality. I've noted that the current buzz and investment level in virtual reality is evidence to me that people want experiences that really take them out of everyday reality. They want kind of a hyper reality. I think that's what the expectation of VR is. But in terms of interactivity or being able to control the movie or having alternate endings or game-like qualities, that's not my forte. I understand it to a certain degree, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with VR. But my focus now is on a completely new way to make movies, which is to abandon the old frame rate of 24. I'm now working at 120 frames a second. I'm working in 3D. I'm working at 4K instead of 2K. I'm working at screen sizes that are 4 times the size, width, and height of normal movie screens, 4 times the brightness of normal movie screens, 40 channels of sound, infrasonic sound that goes down to 1 hertz, and a whole bunch of attributes that create a hyper reality that's like a window rather than a movie screen. And so that opens the door to this very participatory kind of experiential immersiveness that Kubrick was after when I was young, and which I think has still not yet been fully attained. But I feel like I'm within striking distance of it right now with this new technology I've developed called Magi. So that's what I'm working on right now, and I think I've finally harnessed all the horsepower that's made available by digital technologies, and I'm using all off-the-shelf stuff. I can rent these cameras, buy these cameras, the projectors are available, the screens are easy to build, speakers, amplifiers, everything you want can be done. And I think it's time to rethink what the movie experience can be, because if we don't, streaming and downloading is just going to, rule the day. And I think movie theaters are already in decline, and it will get worse.
Yeah, I guess that totally leads into my final question for you is do you envision a worst case scenario for cinema? Like, is that the worst case scenario, is that there is no more movie theaters and it is all streaming and downloading from home?
I think it's just going to be a very slow, inexorable mess that will take very many years to unfold. There's no question that there will be some better theaters, as there already are. There are new technologies that Dolby's launching right now with Christie called Dolby Cinema, which has bigger screens and brighter screens and laser projection and better sound and high dynamic range imagery. And I'm all for it. I think it's going to be great. I think it will help the movie industry. I think that 3D has helped the movie industry slow its decline. But in the basic numbers, the total number of people that go to see movies in the United States is in constant decline. People are just turning off, and they're finding it, they just, wait, because seeing a movie in a movie theater at 3-foot Lamberts in 3D versus seeing it on your TV set or your tablet or something at 50-foot Lamberts with much brighter colors and more vivid imagery is very compelling and seductive and inexpensive and convenient. So there's no reason to think that it's not going to continue to erode. And I think that it's time for the industry itself to actually say, how do we reboot ourselves? How do we really bring people back into theaters in humongously big numbers and revive this industry, because it's a fantastic industry. It just needs to be a more powerful and immersive experience that you can't get on your iPhone or your tablet or your television set. Then people will pay to go see it. It doesn't even matter what the price is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, if you'll pay $120 to go see a rock concert or a Cirque du Soleil or something, I'm not saying what a movie ticket price should be, but I'm saying that I think there is plenty of future in movies, but it really needs to change dramatically.
Right. So the goal is to, elevate the movie experience to where technology could be, where you can get people to want to go see them in the theaters. And it sounds like you're on the right track there.
Well, I hope I am. I just think, movies are a technical art form. It's not like painting or writing or sculpture or poetry or anything. It's technological. And so the technology side of it has to go hand in hand with the artistry of it. And we're in this weird place where movies are largely special effects now anyway. Visual effects are really driving the industry because it's the novelty and spectacle of it all, of how many things you can blow up or how many flaming tunnels you can be in or how many, alien monsters can attack or, all that kind of stuff. It's actually getting kind of redundant and boring to me. I'm over superhero movies, and I think Hollywood's got to get out of this superhero blockbuster tentpole reboot, sequel, syndrome and start thinking creatively again.
I'm looking into the future, and the listeners of our show are probably standing up and applauding at that right now because we are all in superhero fatigue. Yeah, everyone that listens to our show is pretty much in superhero fatigue as well.
Yeah, right. So I think there's plenty of room out there. There's plenty of creativity. There's a lot of good ideas. There's a lot of movies that have been written and created and never filmed because they don't fit a mold that Hollywood is presently kind of stuck in. But I think if we just take a fresh look at it, we can revive it and really make spectacle out of it. I don't think the audience knows that the largest theater chain in the United States, AMC, is now owned by the Chinese.
Right.
They don't know that the second largest, Regal, is for sale. And so they don't really recognize that the movie exhibition business is in trouble. And it really doesn't concern them that Disney or somebody spent, $150 or $200 million on Tomorrowland, for instance, and it was a dog, and they had to write it off. And if you look at the number of movies that the studios are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on that they write off because they fail, it's very scary.
Mm-hmm.
And George Lucas and Steven Spielberg have spoken publicly about their fear of how this is entrapping the movie industry into a syndrome that will lead to some bankruptcies.
Right.
Anyhow, I could go on forever, but
we would love to have you go on forever, but we know
Yes.
we don't want to take up too much of your time. I think Abe has one more question for you, and then we'll let you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
You're talking about this new technology. What are you working on right now? Is there anything we will be able to see from you soon?
Well, I'm going to start inviting people for screenings here at my studio in Massachusetts because I've made a demonstration film about UFOs. It's called UFOTOG, and it's shot at 120 frames, 4K, 3D, high brightness, widescreen, and I've redesigned the theater that it gets shown in. It's a completely different kind of theater. So the theater is more like a holodeck, and it's not a movie theater. You walk into it and you say, oh my God, I just walked into a time machine or a spacecraft. And the screen is monumentally wraparound. It's not size, it's field of view. This is a major discovery I've made. It's not size does not matter. It's field of view that matters. So you can scale it up to small, medium, and large, and the effect is exactly the same. So I made a demo film, and now I'm building this theater, which will be finished in mid to late November. And then I'm going to start inviting movie directors and studio heads and other people here to come and see it as an example of what I think the movie industry could become. And then we'll see if we can start collaborating with the industry or find investors. I have a feature film that I want to make in this process. I've built this whole studio here as a way of doing virtual production using set extensions and green screen and digital compositing. And I had to go through this exercise to prove to myself that it actually could be done to do everything that people do in movies in 4K, 3D, and 120 frames, and it wouldn't break the bank or scare anybody. And it's actually quite easy and quite inexpensive. So I'm pleased to say that the future is in hand, and I can do it right here in my own studio just for myself. I don't want to control the world or anything, but I have a movie or two that I want to make that I can make quite inexpensively, like for a quarter of Hollywood costs, and have it still look just as good, but look much better because of the process.
Right.
So fascinating.
So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm going to show it to everybody and say, you're invited here, and come and see it, because I've tried to show it in LA, and there are no theaters in LA where I could show this properly. The movie industry is just a bunch of rectangular boxes with flat screens that are as boring as the television set I'm looking at in this room.
Are you documenting this process at all? The construction of the theater and everything? Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and there's going to be quite a lot that'll go up on my website pretty soon.
Okay, cool.
Super exciting. Douglas.
Well, you're invited. Come on in anytime.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm in New Jersey. I will get up to Massachusetts.
Okay,
I will
you're
be there.
driving distance away. Come on,
I'm there.
A couple hours, you're here.
All right.
All right.
I'm holding you to that invite. I'm coming.
Okay.
Doug, it was so great to talk to you.
This is awesome.
You were
Really.
amazing.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks for calling, and let me know.
Yes, sir.
Sounds good. Bye,
Okay,
Doug.
thanks a lot. Okay. Bye-bye.
Very cool. And
Oh yeah.
I'm taking him up on the offer. We're gonna
You going?
I'm gonna go.
Awesome. Awesome.
Go visit him. Take a drive up to his place. Check out what he's talking about. I mean, some really interesting stuff. It's just a very interesting guy. Hell of a career. And what was your biggest takeaway, or what was like your favorite thing he was talking about in it?
I'm excited to see what he can do. He seemed pretty damn confident that he could create this amazing experience. So how can you not be excited just to see?
Yeah, and
what he can do. Yeah.
It's I know you haven't gotten through Interstellar. I haven't watched it yet. But there's a lot of hype over what Christopher Nolan did with Interstellar, and Douglas is going to try to up it even more than that. So
I hope he can do it.
Me too.
I will say one thing here. I like the idea that he's pushing technology. I want to see this new film-going experience, but it's not the lack of immersion that's keeping me from going to the theater. It's the people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you just simply cannot trust some asshole not to ruin your whole evening. My immersion experience in a film is ruined by some idiot talking, or as one of the cases lately, of ignoring basic bodily hygiene.
Yeah. Movie-going experience. And that's
it.
That's my problem too.
Yeah.
One of my best movie-going experiences in recent times, I think maybe I mentioned it to you. Me and my wife went to go see the True Grit remake.
Nice.
And we were the only two people in the theater.
There you go.
Great. It was fantastic. It was fantastic.
I do have to get one last shot in, though. Doug was talking about Dolby Cinema. Mm-hmm. Dolby, after your debacle with the 3D Star Wars presentation, I don't know if I trust you at all to present a movie to me.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
I'm still bitter.
Yeah. And if you want to know what Abe's talking about, go check out our Star Wars The Force Awakens review so you can hear him bitch about that, because it's a worthy bitching. Gonna wrap up another episode of the Movie Stuff Show. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube, also like us on Facebook, find us on Twitter. If you want to hit us up via email, hit us up via email. We're around. We like to talk. That's what we do all the time.
Some of us more than others, but yes, we both like to talk.
That's me.
Oh,
that was another shot at me. Jesus.
Man, you're on edge lately. I don't know. You think everything's about you lately.
No, that was another shot at me. I was going to give you final words. Was that your final words?
See you next Wednesday.
Not you two. Later.
See you.